So one of the difficult things that I struggle with is figuring out what how to put something quote unquote within the literature in terms of an idea. It's something as researchers that we struggle with. Is thinking about, and maybe it is unique to my field, but I don't think it is. I mean, it is a really important consideration, um, but I don't think it's, vastly unique. Uh, and here I want to sort of talk about what do I actually mean here, right? So I apologize, I'm eating some cherries. Um, but the challenge is you might come up with this really interesting empirical insight, right? You might get some data, and the data says something cool that you're like, oh yeah, I would never thought about that. But the problem that we have is that we have to provide a framework through which other people would understand what you're talking about. So it's kind of layered. You can't just specifically talk about the fact that it is raining outside. Nobody's going to care about that. It's not really a scientific finding. It's really hard to get this. Like super impossible to hard to figure this out. And I'm always trying to figure it out. But you also have to think about what it is that you're actually trying to say on a larger scale in an abstract way. And this is like super difficult to think about. So it's not just talking about, and you couldn't just say precipitation, right? You might be thinking, okay, more abstract ways to talk about precipitation or climate, but that's really not what you can do. You have to look at something really much more abstract than that and base it within what other people have actually said. And it's not even just with what other people have said about this particular thing, like rainfall, but it's what other people have said. Maybe it's about, um, a broader phenomenon or a broader thing that is theoretically interesting. I don't know what the current theories of rainfall actually is, but you would think about, what is the broader thing? What is it that you're actually trying to do? And I am constantly coming up with, so me, I'm very empirically grounded. I look at the world and I just simply say, hey, this, what do I mean by that? I look at the world and I say, something happened in the world and this is interesting, right? Maybe there's a war that happened, I don't know, and that is interesting to me. That talking about that a war exists or talking about that rain exists um, is not something that you can ever get published. You actually have to get more at a broader thing that is situated within what you're already talking about, within the literature of what you're talking about. And the challenge is finding that right angle that is situated with the right group that understand your conversation. And it's super hard to figure out because you might think this is abstract enough or this is sort of situated within the conversation. But then you go and you find, you actually work on this thing and you do it, and it's not abstract enough or it doesn't fit with what other people are talking about. And if you just miss the conversation just even a little bit, people don't like that and they just automatically reject what you're doing because they don't understand the sort of basic thing that you're looking at, that maybe rain falls. And they will argue with you that maybe rain is not falling, right? And it's this weird dance of figuring out how abstract, how um, how might you actually talk about a broader thing? Um, Anybody that's in science kind of gets what I'm talking. So if you're in the hard sciences, you're not going to get it as much as what I'm talking about. Maybe if you are a theorist, right? You're a physicist, theoretical physicist, you're probably going to understand what I'm talking about. But if you are more, the social sciences definitely have to think about this in terms of these abstract notions. But, coming back to the something in theoretical physics, right? Like mass, for example. Well, mass, if you think about it, it's you don't really directly measure mass, right? You're actually measuring weight, and then you have to figure out a way to sort of backwards induct to get this idea of what mass actually is. Um, and so it's a really challenging sort of concept. And we don't even really have a good sense. I mean, we have a good sense, right? Like you're going to argue with me, but we don't have a good sense of what actually mass is, right? We're still trying to figure some of these sort of answers out, what it is, what it actually is, right? Because some things have mass and some things don't. Some things, the vast universe has all these kind of things that I don't know what it's called, like dark matter and all this kind of stuff that is really important, but we still don't understand what exactly it is, right? Like there's these important questions that are very abstract. And that's actually the thing that we're trying to answer with this sort of empirical stuff that you're looking at. It's not the specific thing that you're looking at, right? So for example, you might look at crime rates, for example, crime rates around the world. You might come up with this sort of important relationship, right? So I don't know. I'm going to make something up. Crime rates go up when the divorce rate goes up in a country. I don't know if that's true. Maybe that's true. Um, but then you would have this sort of interesting finding, right? That you would find this thing. You'd be like, hey, this is cool. But you cannot talk about the fact that crime rates go up because divorce rates go up. That's not an interesting enough finding. You would have to come up with a broader thing that's maybe something to do with, say, for example, people's ability to deal with uncertainty. We only have a limited amount of ability to deal with uncertainty, and if we have more uncertainty in our life, we're more likely to lash out in different ways. One of them is through crime rates, or another sort of thing to think about is maybe it's stability, right? We need stability in our life, and without that stability in our life, we're more likely to commit crimes, right? Like um, that is a little bit more of what we're looking at, but it's still not quite right. Like you can come up with even a more abstract notion of what we are trying to do, and maybe it's not necessarily decision making or capabilities or something like that, but maybe it's a higher order thing that's actually happening. Um, so maybe it is not necessarily people's uncertainty levels, right? Because it doesn't match exactly of looking at, maybe you're looking at country level data, and maybe it's actually our contextual understanding of what we actually feel like in terms of our uncertainty based on the institutions that we are in. And that's a long-winded way to talk about something, but then you would have to come up with a theory around that, and it becomes so painful. Um, I'm trying to figure this stuff out, and I don't know what the right thing is to do. And I've struggled with this for so long. I still can't figure out what I should talk about. If I come across and I just talk about divorce rates, right? For example, that's not scientific enough. That's not going to cut the mustard. Even though you might think, yeah, that is pretty interesting. I know, but it doesn't cut the mustard in terms of a scientific discussion. Um, and I really struggle with that. I don't see it, and maybe that comes with experience. I don't know, but I still don't see it. right? And I'm still going to struggle, probably will struggle with this until I'm 85 years old, trying to figure out what I'm actually looking at. And man, it's just a difficult thing to think about always, because it's never what you think it is, and it's not necessarily, you might come up with a sort of abstract notion, but if you can't talk about it to other people such that they would say, I get what you're talking about, I approve of it, right? Uh, if you can't get that, then nothing ever gets published. And it's just this like really, I get frustrated so much. I don't know what the answers are, but I do know that this is a vital component with sort of selling your ideas and talking about your ideas to other people. So if you have tips, let us all know. We'd like to hear. All right, take care. Have a wonderful day.